Hello, in this video I want to share my views in terms of alliance points gain, i.e. AP points gained during PvP play sessions. You will naturally gain some AP through playing PvP without really trying, because you get AP for various activities such as taking keeps, resources and killing players. However, different players will have different levels of emphasis placed on maximising AP points gained versus just having a fun time with PvP, because these aren't necessarily the same thing. For example, you could earn very good AP by coming on the campaign at a period where there's very few enemies on and taking enemy keeps while they are relatively undefended, thus earning the 6000 AP keep attack tick for each keep you take. If keeps were undefended, you could do this fairly quickly and therefore earn a lot of AP. However, this is not necessarily the most fun way of playing PvP. Therefore, as a raid leader or even as a normal player, you will need to decide for yourself where your preference lies in regards to whether you're focused on gaining AP or having a fun experience. For most people, this is a spectrum and they'll fall somewhere in the middle. For example, myself personally, I'm fairly close to the middle with a slight preference towards AP gain. However, I will not focus an entire evening just on AP maximisation. I will also look for some fun fights here and there, even if this isn't necessarily going to get me much AP. Before we go any further, let me give a bit more specific information on how you gain AP for those that may not have been playing PvP for long. Whenever you attack a keep, you will by default get to 6000 points for taking that keep. On top of this, you'll get additional points if you killed any enemy players during the attack of that keep. This additional points will be distributed equally across every allied player that participated in that attack. For example, if you killed lots of players but there was lots of allies also attacking the keep, the bonus won't be that massive, but if you're a relatively small group and you kill lots of enemies whilst attacking the keep, you will get significantly more than the base 6000 AP. It is a very similar scenario when attacking resources, other than the fact that the default AP gain is 1500 points rather than 6000. When defending a keep, there is no default value for defending the keep. However, the rate at which points are added for killing enemy players is at a higher rate, meaning that if you defend and kill lots of players, you will likely get an overall larger AP gain than attacking and killing lots of players, because it is gained at a higher rate. Again, this is split and distributed amongst all the defenders, so if there's a lot of defenders versus not many attackers, you won't get many points, whereas if there's not many defenders and a lot of attackers, you'll get a lot of points. One thing to bear in mind when defending is that when the tick is calculated, it can sometimes be a little bit odd and can surprise people. Most of the time, it will only give the points if the keep is fully defended, it comes out of siege and there is no enemies nearby to siege. However, sometimes and somewhat arbitrarily, you'll get the defense tick during a defense, and therefore the calculations will be reset at that point and it will start adding up again if the attackers continue to attack. Defending keeps and resources work in a very similar way in this matter of fact. However, it is worth noting that it is much harder to defend a resource and stop the enemy group from taking the flag than it is to defend a keep, because the typical tendency when defending a resource is to go into the tower and hold the tower rather than the flag. Therefore, what will commonly happen when quote unquote defending a resource is that the defending group will allow the keep to flip, but then after they've killed all the enemy players, they will then retake the flag, and it will effectively therefore be an attacking resource, even if it in reality is more of a defensive action. AP can also be gained by killing enemy players in an open field fight. Again, this is split between the group, so if you kill enemy players while solo, you'll get more AP for it than you would if you kill those same enemy players whilst in a group. However, obviously, if you're in a group, you'll find that you can take on bigger enemy groups, and therefore, in theory, the AP can balance out. However, from my experience, if from purely killing players, you will be able to gain AP more effectively while solo or in a small group of less than 4 players than you will in a large group of say 16 plus players. I would also like to give some benchmarks of the sort of AP per hour gain I get whilst playing. These are only for me, and I'm not going to pretend for a moment that I'm one of the best players in the game. I'm sure there are players in the game that gain AP at a far greater rate than me. However, it will give you something to benchmark yourself against and understand where you are performing in terms of AP gain. When I play in guild groups that don't have any pre-raid organisation, such as setting certain classes or builds, organising ultimates, or pre-planning certain roles for certain individuals, I tend to find that my AP per hour gain is around 40 to 45k per hour. When playing in guild raids that are a little bit more organised in terms of having some pre-raid planning in terms of giving information about builds that people play on and assigning certain skills, etc., etc., such as the raids that I run, that can quite quickly bump up to around 60k per hour. However, this does rely on both skilled players within the group and a skilled leader. I don't have much experience in playing either pub groups or in very elite, sometimes smaller groups, so I can't really comment on the exact AP per hour that you'll get in these sort of groups, but I imagine for pub groups it would be probably around 30 to 35k an hour, and in an elite group you may be looking at 70 to 80k AP per hour. In terms of the solo experience, I find that this is much more variable than group. Those stats that I just gave for group tend to be fairly consistent across play sessions. However, when I'm playing solo, it's a lot more variable depending on what's going on during the map. The most effective way to gain AP while solo is just to run around leeching bigger groups as they take keeps, and as soon as they take one keep, immediately run off to something else that's under siege. Whilst this isn't necessarily contributing much to your alliance, it does, in my experience, form the best way of getting solo AP. But this does rely on your alliance being on the offensive and actually taking keeps. If your alliance is doing so, the best AP per hour gain while solo I've ever experienced is around 50 to 60k. I've had outliers that are better than that, but they were very much outliers, so I wouldn't want to use them to benchmark. When the alliance that I'm playing with isn't doing as much, I've been as low as 20 to 30k AP per hour, and this is mostly just running around taking resources solo. There are, however, some unique strategies that only work while solo. For example, I often see whilst playing in groups that people try to do bomber builds, i.e. they'll wait for an enemy group to take a flag at a resource, and whilst they're all stacked up and not really paying attention, they'll use a build with very high burst damage to run in, deal that burst damage, kill half the players whilst they're not aware, and yes, they'll probably die afterwards, but they can easily gain a lot of AP during that initial attack. This can be very effective, however you do need a build very optimized to do so, and you also need a lot of patience because a lot of the time the enemy group won't do what they need to do in order for you to bomb them, and therefore you will need to be patient and wait for the best opportunity. Going back to my earlier comment about raid leaders needing to sit onto a spectrum of whether they prefer AP gain or player fights, every raid leader will need to decide whether their preference is for taking enemy keeps, especially undefended ones, or actually fighting enemy players. Taking undefended keeps with a large group will gain you AP very efficiently, however can quickly become monotonous and become a bit boring over the length of a play session. Therefore, a good raid leader will generally, whilst they will have a preference for one or the other, will generally try and split shift and do both within any given play session. Now that I've spoken a little bit about how to best gain AP, I now want to speak a little bit about the other side of the coin, which is how to spend AP. There's loads and loads of different ways of spending AP, but I'll give a few pointers on how I choose to spend it. One option on how to spend it is the Golden Vendor. This is a vendor that only appears during the weekend and will be somewhere at your alliance's home keeps. The vendor will have a mixture of gold quality monster sets and jewellery, which rotate every week. It is relatively expensive to buy this equipment. For example, this monster set hat is costing either 100k gold, because you can buy all of them with gold as well as AP, or 200k AP. Some can go up to the 500k AP that this jewellery costs. However, given that it is gold jewellery, this can often be worth it, especially for items that can be sold on, because golden jewellery is often very expensive due to the high cost of the material required to get jewellery to golden. Since this rotates on a weekly basis, it is worth checking in if possible every week to see whether the particular equipment you would need for build is there, as this can be a good way of avoiding having to farm dungeons, which often PvP players wouldn't enjoy. Another way of spending AP is at the War Researcher, which can also be found at your Alliance's home keeps. This person sells a variety of items, including H scales, which is required to craft Akaviri motive equipment, the range of Akaviri motive chapters, Arena Gladiators items, which also require the proofs which you gain from the daily conquest quests, and you can also buy Dawn Prison, which is required for crafting the Trirune trait on jewellery, and your Alliance's crafting item required for your Alliance's style. For me, since I play on the Daggerfall Covenant side, it's the Lion Fang. For EP and AD it will be different items. Again, these can be quite expensive. For example, the crafting motives are 250k to 500k AP, but these can either be used for personal use or sold for a reasonable amount. I find if you want to sell, the best value for money is the Dawn Prism. This is the one that you get most bang for the buck for, but that obviously may change over time, and I'm not a trader, I don't research things particularly well, so I could well be wrong in that matter. The third way that I choose to spend AP, which less people know about because it's not directly available in Cyrodiil, is at a Battlegrounds supply merchant. The one that I choose to use is in Vardenfell, near the capital. So if you are in Vivek City, it's just in the bottom corner here to the left. And if you interact with him, he sells Militant Auditor crafting motive chapters. These tend to sell at a better price than the equivalent Akaviri ones. Again, I reckon this is because there's less people that know that you can spend AP on these things. So if you're looking for value for money to convert AP into gold, these are what I would recommend. So that's my view on both gaining and spending AP. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you next time.